Welcome to Founder Friday with Microsoft for Startups. My name is Kevin McGee, and I am the cybersecurity lead for Microsoft for Startups globally. Now, in my early days working in the tech industry, I used to think of compliance as staying inside the crosswalks so you don't get a good scolding for jaywalking. But security, now that's the part where you actually look both ways to make sure you don't get flattened by a truck. One sort of keeps you out of trouble, the other one keeps you alive. And I've spent enough time in boardrooms to know that when compliance comes up, the conversation always turns to minimizing costs and minimum requirements. And really, it's been about sort of checking those boxes, the discussion for years and years and years. Now, the last little while, my thinking on what compliance is and how it can be a competitive advantage has completely changed. And I have the privilege of having one of the gentlemen who helped me change my thinking completely with me today to discuss this shift in compliance and how compliance become not only easy, but actually a real competitive advantage for your business. So with me today is the CEO of a company called RegScale. Now, RegScale is one of my cybersecurity portfolio companies within our Pegasus program, which is our top go-to-market program at Microsoft. And wanted to welcome you, Travis, and hopefully we're looking forward to a really great conversation about how you founded the company, how you vision it, and where it's headed in changing compliance.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us, and absolute pleasure to be here. We're honored.
Awesome. So I think it is Founder Friday, and now a lot of founders don't like sort of talking about themselves. Other ones really do. I've always pegged you as a don't like talking about yourself, but I think your background is really fascinating in positioning you well for this industry. So undergraduate degree in organizational management, and then a computer science master's degree. Kind of the backward approach to what most people do. They do the computer science and the MBA. I just thought that really sort of set up your early educational space for the founding of this company and managing this company, and then your work experience just build on that. So if you could sort of share some of those that journey or some highlights from that, I think it would be really fascinating.
Yeah. So I've always just really enjoyed the intersection of business and technology, and so I think probably equal parts of my brain get attracted to both. And so I started in national security roles, became the CIO early in my career on the federal side, later became the chief technology officer for the U.S. nuclear weapons program. Later went to Oak Ridge National Lab, got to run the IT services division there, building some of the big science capabilities for the United States, which was a pretty amazing role. And then I got to work for one of the best companies in the world at Bechtel, helping lead digital transformation globally for them. And so just had a lot of experience at scale where risk and compliance were kind of always the bane of my existence. I just thought if you were to lock everybody in a room and we gave you sort of a management challenge to say, design the most inefficient system possible for working through how you ensure good security, you would struggle to come up with something as inefficient as what the industry has done over the prior decades. And we just thought it was an area that was ripe for innovation because security is too important to not take seriously. And while compliance doesn't always equal good security, it is a roadmap to good security, right? And so we thought, well, let's just rethink fundamentally how this is done in a way that makes it more of a competitive advantage and less of a cost center. That's sort of the mission we set out to solve. So if we thought, well, if nobody else is going to do it, then screw it, we'll do it. And that's kind of how we got here.
Loved how you just breezed over a couple of those. I want to pause. You've
Yep.
been a CIO, a CTO, protected nuclear weapons, probably some
Mhm.
compliance, concerns around that, but also digital transformation. And I think that's the key here is that, compliance is not just about sort of checking those boxes. It can be a driver of digital transformation. And I see that sort of fingerprint of your experience in those roles in quite a bit of the company as well.
Yeah. And you see it really, it's not a government thing. I thought it was until I got out of government. And then I realized it's a scale thing. And the bigger you are, the more assets you have, the more risk averse you become because you don't want to lose your assets. So, it's the Warren Buffett, the first rule of making money is don't lose money. And so at scale, you just become more risk adverse, right? And so we were looking at sort of software development's fast, especially with AI and some of the stuff Microsoft's doing and these code technologies. DevOps is fast, cloud is fast in Azure. Everything's fast until you hit risk and compliance, and then the brakes get slammed on. And we thought, well, this is just, one of the last big computer science problems to solve to make this work end to end for digital transformation and highly regulated industry. And it just seemed like the most interesting problem in the world to go solve to me. And I'm an engineer at heart, and so I could see the business reasons of why you would want to solve the problem, but I'm also just insanely attracted to how hard it is as a problem to solve and the chance to build a team to go after it.
Well, there's two components that I really think about that you're solving for. One is there's this mind-numbingly boring paperwork problem that every organization on the planet has.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a pretty big total addressable market there. And then there's this other one, which is the sort of big thinking, the cultural change to embracing compliance and thinking about it a very different way, completely other end of the business spectrum. So, you're solving for two problems simultaneously. How did that come together?
Yeah, basically out of personal pain. So Anil and I were trying to modernize some technology in the government, created hundreds of pages of paperwork. Nobody wanted to read, nobody wanted to write, but it's sort of the Disney pass that lets you into the theme park. Without it, you can't go. Right. And so it was a very frustrating experience. And we were thinking about what the future was going to look like. So this was probably 2015 or so. And Anil and I were batting it back and forth. And we thought a couple of things were going to happen. We thought, well, everything's going to be cloud native, which means it's going to be increasingly ephemeral, serverless, spin up and down on demand. So manual paper-based stuff will go from frustrating and expensive to stupid as a function of time. It just won't work. At the same time, we were watching what I call the cyber Oprah effect, which is, Kevin, you get a framework, I get a framework, everybody gets a framework. So instead of passing out new cars, we pass out new regulations every year. And it just keeps piling up on people in a cost center in a way that's not really sustainable. And then Moore's law is continuing. So you got to go faster. And so we just thought, who's in a position to hit a moving target at twice the scope, at 4 to 8 times the speed by 2030 to support what the business is going to need for their digital transformation journey? And we thought, well, nope, nobody's set up for that. And then we set out to just build a better mousetrap, I guess, of just let's rethink the problem end to end. And so we did things like, well, what if we started with compliance as code? And so instead of just huge spreadsheets, manual copy and paste exercises into documents, what if I could pull my control library, my risk library, the same way I pull my code in GitHub, right? That would give me sort of a as code foundation. I could feed that into all the telemetry and observability we have in a modern cloud world. And most of my paperwork could become self-updating. And then what if we wrap that in AI agents that did a lot of the document development, the risk assessments, many of the manual tasks we put humans on? And we built our first fleet of agents on OpenAI, all leveraging the Azure cloud on the back end. And it's really just been a game changer for our customers. Things that would take forever to do with humans, literally months and months in a conference room, can be done in the first hour with AI and these types of approaches. And so it makes it just much faster. And I had an old boss at ORNL used to say, you want to make doing the right thing the easy thing. And so I think we've taken an approach that makes it much easier to do the right thing without so much pain.
I remember after the first meeting we had, and sort of I got a sense of what you're building. I've sat on a lot of boards and a lot of audit committees. Being the cybersecurity guy, I always get the audit committee whenever I'm on a board. And I remember this one particular meeting we were discussing, should we accept this risk? Should we mitigate? How do we manage this risk? Well, we had no idea what our risk appetite was because we didn't know what our compliance posture was. We knew what our security posture was. We didn't know what our compliance posture was. And the reports we were able to pull were 18 months, 2 years out of date. So that was 2 years ago. And you said everything moves so quickly.
Mm-hmm.
But what if I could know my security posture and my compliance posture in near real time? Mm-hmm. How would that allow us to make better decisions, to move faster, to determine what our risk appetite is and whatnot? And that's where the value of what you're building really came clear to me in that moment, because had I had an ability to say, hey, here's where we are, I could have made a much more informed decision. So I got to think that other customers are seeing that value as well, not just in eliminating the paperwork challenges, but this decision framework that you're providing them to make better business decisions.
Absolutely. And I think it's this mindset switch of we go through all these weird mechanics in the industry when it comes to audits. And so, like, I had a general that I worked for who described this the best way I think anyone ever has to me, or at least it stuck with me for decades at this point. But he described audits as a mother in law visit. It's like, she's coming, so you clean the house to some ridiculous standard. Everybody comes over, you pretend you always live like this, and then your house falls into immediate disrepair as soon as they leave. What we wanted to do is make every day the house look like that, right? And so that you could live at a higher standard of living, you could know exactly what's going on at all times to where you can audit me whenever. I've always got a head-up display and know exactly what's going on, and we're on top of it, right? That's the sort of cockpit that we want to build for CISOs. And so we think of ourselves less as a generation one GRC tool, which was automated in the sense that you type it into a web portal instead of Word or Excel, which is to say it's still a very manual process. And it should just be a set and forget sort of system where we live in an API first economy, a cloud native economy, a high observability telemetry economy. Most of this stuff can just write itself. And for the parts that can't, let's let AI do the rest so we can use the humans for what you want them to do, which is make risk-based decisions. Because as much as I love Azure and OpenAI, I don't want it making strategic risk decisions for my company, right? That's still a pretty inherently human function. But I think everybody we talk to is on board with, how do I get to the point where I can make an informed decision faster at the lowest cost with the greatest precision of data, right? And I think that's what these kind of approaches can offer.
So ultimately, I never thought of this, but this is becoming another advantage of adding you to my portfolio. A number of our other startups are building products, and they come to me or they come to my peers and say, we need FedRAMP. We don't know how to get FedRAMP. What is FedRAMP?
Yep.
And I often sort of say, hey, I know a guy, and make the connection. So I think this is a fascinating story, and I'd rather you tell it than me try to. But not only are you enabling others to achieve FedRAMP, but you actually used your own tools, or what do they say? You drink your own champagne
Yep.
in your process, which is an incredible case study, I think, in your success, but also really what can be done with when you automate the technology.
Yeah, and as you're aware, we went and got our FedRAMP high, which is ridiculous for a company of our size. Even some of the biggest companies on the planet have not gotten to that security bar. Partially because, like, I'm an old nuclear weapons guy, so we go system high, and I'm just used to operating that kind of environment. And several of the leaders on our team are as well. But sort of, there were a couple of things that helped us get there. One is we partner with Microsoft on Azure. Something I don't think is fully appreciated about Azure. I mean, before we ever had a relationship with Microsoft, we were looking at AWS, we were looking at Google too, and trying to solve the best answer. Azure Commercial is FedRAMP high. They're the only commercial cloud that basically all their services are FedRAMP high. All the others, you have to go to like this Gov Cloud that's 3 years behind, that's got a deprecated set of services. It's not a great experience. And so the fact we could be on razor's edge with Microsoft without having to compromise at all on security was a huge deal to us. Second, we were able to leverage OpenAI in the back end of these agents, things that literally would have taken us months and months with an advisory firm around a conference room table to develop all this documentation, just became self-updating. And so by using our platform, by partnering with Microsoft and building smarter, we were able to greatly accelerate our curve. And so first CISO was here. I think he touts getting it done 75% faster than normal, 75% cheaper than normal, by using a combination of RegScale with Microsoft Azure. It can really accelerate your FedRAMP journey. But the same would be true of CMMC or pick any other cyber standard out there. Building on that foundation, it can just save you a ton of time and money, because this is not the sort of thing people want to spend a ton of money on. But you absolutely need it if you want to sell to certain markets.
The feedback I've gotten is not just you help them accelerate it because of the technology you built, but just the expertise that you built building this technology and
Mm-hmm.
approaching these as well too. And I'm just looking over my note screen, like there's a long list of these. You've picked on a couple of them, but there's other regulatory compliance needs out there. The one that jumped out at me was Cato, being a historian. I didn't know if that was the elder or the younger, but I had to actually look it up. I wasn't familiar with it. Can you tell me about what you're doing? What, first of all, Cato is and what you're doing in that space as well?
Yeah. So if you think about what the government and others have done in continuous monitoring for years, we're resource constrained, and we are mostly resource constrained by the inability to find enough qualified humans or to have enough funding to pay for the qualified humans, even if I could find them. So what do? We end up doing small samples. We look at X number of controls per year. And then by year 3, maybe we've covered them all. But if I've got PII sitting in a S3 bucket, unencrypted, is finding it once every 3 years really an acceptable risk? Probably not. I don't know any CISO that would feel comfortable with that. Right. And so the question is, how do we get continuous without exploding cost? And that was sort of the trick we've been trying to pull off with our new architecture of you've got all these tools, you've got all this telemetry. How do we put it all together in sort of that heads up display for governance, compliance, and risk so I can see it without having to put humans on rounds? And it's a combination of extreme automation, just pulling things from systems that already have it and being very opinionated. Like another thing I'll say in the top of market where we play is there's lots of vendors who will say, well, we'll build it together. We've got a platform for building platforms, and there's certainly a place for that. And I've met customers who they're willing to spend tens of millions of dollars on this, and they need a snowflake, and you absolutely should buy those types of tools for that. But we think most of the market just wants it to work out of the box. Like, they don't want to have to hire all the expertise and figure out exactly how to build it. They want experts to build it based off best practice and then teach them how to use it. And so that's been our opinionated approach, is just wire it up to where it works out of the box. It's simpler to operate. It's built off best practice. You can extend it a little bit around the edges, but you're not building sort of bespoke solutions, right? And then on top of that, build AI first experiences all throughout. So everywhere, we've sort of taken a Toyota production system approach where we've looked at the value stream of what it takes to get certifications and all the steps that go in it. And everywhere a human puts hands on keyboards, we kind of view as a fail. And so everywhere we can, we want to take that cost and that pain out of the system. And I won't say we've solved all of it, but we're on a journey to solve all of it, right? And so we're building an increasing fleet of AI agents, more automation and integration. And over time, we want to get to where it just works.
So the number one question I get asked when I introduce you to either Microsoft account team or to a customer is, well, are they a consulting company? Like, where do they, or with some tools or whatnot? And I struggle sometimes to convince a customer initially that no, it's not quite off the shelf, but it's pretty darn close, right?
Yep.
That's where you're shifting. So where are things going? You touched on it, and I'll probably be fired if I don't mention AI
Mm-hmm.
so many times. Where you touched on how are all of the advances in AI, agentic AI in particular, going to change the needs of compliance, and then how are you reacting? Because I mean, every time I wake up, I open the news, it's literally a completely different landscape. But the compliance space moves really slow,
Mm-hmm.
but you're moving very fast and being successful. So help me unpack that a little.
Yeah, so I'd say there's a couple of things we're doing there. One is just being a bit customer obsessed with the problem. And so we've got some really innovative customers we work with who know the pains deeply. And we're just sort of working down the backlog of the next biggest problem that they need solved that generates the most ROI for them. I describe this as sort of innovating in the most boring market in the world, right? Like there's nothing excited about compliance, but part of why it's ripe for AI disruption is nobody's going to miss it. Like there's a lot of areas where AI is going to come in and it's going to take jobs and it's going to be painful culturally. It's going to be painful for folks because they loved what they do, but maybe you don't need so many people doing it anymore. And this is an area where I don't think anybody enjoys doing it. And nobody wants to spend the kind of money it takes to do it. So if you can pull this cost out and put it on higher priority work while getting better security outcomes, that's a great trade that almost any company in the world is going to want to make. And so we think because of that, it's an area that's ripe for disruption. It's also an area that's driven heavily by consultants. We're a product company. We build product, we sell product, we have very light services to enable, but we try not to do services. We try to work with partners. Most of this ecosystem is run by the big four consulting companies, three PAOs. We just think over the next 5 years, AI is going to eat a lot of that, and it's going to be less about the speed of technology because it's evolving so fast. It will be more than capable of doing much of this kind of work. It's going to be sort of regulatory acceptance of what they will allow, how fast they'll allow it to adopt. And so we're kind of working backwards from the regulator of what do they need, what will they accept, making sure we prioritize those things, then the audit, and then the first line, right? And so it's a structured approach to trying to figure out how to fix this end to end.
And small, mid-sized businesses, as they grow, they're moving into different markets too. So not only do they have to take, say, maybe one state, two state, three states regulatory compliance needs into account, at some point they have to think about the entire world and what the best
Yes.
practices are. So that could be something that slows down their growth. Really, is saying, well, we can't move into these markets because we're not able to meet compliance. So maybe building compliance controls to the best practices, whether it's European privacy, California laws, whatnot, and then automating that for scale as growth becomes sort of a business enabler as well. So are you seeing that in some of the sort of non-government companies you're working with as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mentioned we're more of a top of market tool. And everybody gets into compliance at some point. Like you've got to go, maybe you got a website, you need to get a SOC 2, and it's sort of an easier one. But eventually, maybe you get a DoD contract. Now I need CMMC. Maybe I want to sell to the largest market in the US in the federal government. Now I'm going to need FedRAMP. Now I want to go to Europe. I'm going to need GDPR and ISO. So pretty quickly, you end up into these complex multi-framework solutions where a tool like RegScale starts to make a lot of sense of how do we simplify that? How do we allow reuse? How do we get as much automation there as we can? How do we use AI to leverage what we already have versus starting new for every one of these things? And while the CISO is almost always our customer, their customer is many times their CRO, their chief revenue officer, the one who has growth targets where I need to be in certain markets and I can't get there because my security team can't get me there. And so it's sort of how do we help them get into more markets faster while not exploding cost is sort of a vitamin to the business. And so we see it as certainly that's a competitive advantage to be agile when it comes to your reps and search, to be able to move into new markets very quickly and easily, while as it may take your competitor months or years to get to the same place you're able to quickly pivot to. And so we certainly see that as a competitive advantage for the business.
And that's where you transition for the customer from vitamin to painkiller.
Yep.
Because now you're enabling revenue, you're enabling top line growth, maybe profitability by taking costs out of the business as well too.
Yep.
So let's say I'm a skeptical CISO. I run a pretty big organization. I've got all the problems you've described. What does a typical engagement with RegScale look like for anyone watching who wants a preview before they reach out to you? What does that look like?
Yeah, normally we do a quick discovery. We give them the pitch on who we are, what we do, why we're different. If they see value in that differentiation, what we'll typically try to get from them is sort of a high level set of what they're trying to do, like their business requirements, KPIs. What are you trying to do? We'll give them sort of a bespoke demo. We tend to do a multi-day sort of workshop with the team where we're going to go hands-on keyboard in RegScale. One of our engineers is going to sit right with you, and we're going to show you how you can accomplish all these goals together in a couple of days, right? So it's not an 18-month implementation project that's going to cost millions of dollars, and trust me, it'll work. Like we're just going to do it together in a conference room together. And then from there, we moved to sort of actually rolling things out to production and getting contracts in place and that sort of thing. So that's been our central motion is show them what we can do, refine it to exactly what they're trying to do, prove it really rapidly with their hands on keyboard, no smoke or mirrors or Wizard of Oz stuff. It's you in a conference room doing it yourself with our experts showing you how to do it, and then moving to scale it up to production scale and get the value that they're hoping to get out of it.
Now, your team has really won the hearts and soul of quite a bit of Microsoft, I got to tell you.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember pitching you in our first recruit meeting with my peers and saying, but they're a compliance automation company. Like, how do they fit in? How are they going to add value? And now I see, the sales teams, really coming forward and saying, hey, this is something we can use not just to meet the customer need for compliance, but we've got these AI projects that are stalled. We want to help the customer uninstall that. I don't know if that's the right approach or whatnot, but something that you mentioned is kind of like the boring part of the business. You've actually got Microsoft, as an organization, sort of quite excited about working with you, and we've had quite a great deal of success. Would love to hear your thoughts about working with Microsoft, and how are we doing helping you as a rapidly growing startup, but also a very deeply technical company that requires incredible support and access to technology.
Yeah, Microsoft's been great to work with from a founder's perspective. Simple things that are meaningful to bottom line are things like Azure credits and generous buckets of that. So we're able to build and prototype things. We're also been able to get some priority access to the AI models as sort of a leading edge AI use case. It's really important that we can count on that. It's always available. Microsoft's been able to help us. We have access to engineers in Redmond who build internet scale systems. So when we are trying to think through architectures and how we build, we have access to the right folks. The go-to-market team has been awesome to pull us into accounts. We've been able to pull actually Microsoft even into accounts they're not in, or at least to a different buying center in the account like the CISO. So I think that's been a nice two-way, mutually beneficial relationship. And even simplifying procurement using Azure Marketplace, where folks have some credits that are already available. It's an much easier transaction on paper that they've already approved. So just using the marketplace to expedite a procurement is another area that's been helpful. And I think FedRAMP has been huge for us, getting our high certification, being the most secure solution in the market in this space. Has really kind of set us apart and built a moat around us. If we hadn't built that on Azure, I don't think we would have that today. And so picking the right cloud provider was really important to us as well. And just you mentioned my background started in business where I got my first degree, but my case study and the person that I studied in school was Bill Gates. And so Microsoft has always been a company that I've admired greatly, and so both me and the entire team are very honored to be partnered with Microsoft, not only as a technology partner but as an investor in our Series B. It's one of those things that you never see something like this happening. At least I didn't. I grew up a poor kid in East Tennessee. Like the fact I could be an entrepreneur in East Tennessee working directly with Microsoft is a dream come true for me. And so never could have imagined this happening.
Yeah, without dating myself, my first two companies I founded in the 90s were founded on BizSpark, which
Mm-hmm.
was the predecessor for Microsoft for startups. So it's very cool to have come full circle, and a Canadian out in the suburbs of Toronto in a little town called Brantford, the home of Wayne Gretzky, can be an entrepreneur as well
Nice.
because of Microsoft. So very similar sort of approach in that as well. And I think it's that democratizing technology. That's been my experience with the company over 30 years, making that platform available for entrepreneurs to build. And
Mm-hmm.
that's what I really enjoy in my everyday job, is working with entrepreneurs that see something different, or see the real hacker sense of the word, taking apart something and finding a new way to use it in a more interesting way. I think that's been the greatest joy of sort of this job, is working with folks like you that are doing that, and I get to to see firsthand some of these companies grow. And speaking of growth, let's end with that. Just incredible growth. You just closed your B round.
Mhm.
M12, our version of corporate venture, has full disclosure, was one of your investors. But I can say, I mean, I know I was one of your biggest advocates for that discussion to say, you know, as an old sales guy, this is a product that I could sell because every customer needs it. Every customer hates, this problem, and every customer is trying to figure out how to overcome it, but no one's really investing in it. So you've raised some money. You're having incredible success. Where's RegScale headed, and what can we expect over the next maybe year or 18 months?
Yeah, we were very blessed with our customers and the folks who believed in us early. We were able to grow 300% the last year, which was just super explosive growth. We've also got some marquee logos who are great innovation partners who are pushing the art of the possible with us, which is really exciting. And then the new people we have around the table, Microsoft M12, who we were in the Pegasus program. We had sought a closer relationship with Microsoft, and now we have it. So again, that was a dream come true for us. Washington Harbor led the round along with Ancona, who's kind of like a co-lead for it. But two top tier investors. We had follow-on investment from some of the originals, as well as Hitachi, as we start to think about going international beyond the U.S. Hitachi is one of the best names in the business. We've really grown to love working with that team as well. So we're really excited about the new players we have at the table with us. Just brilliant minds, unbelievable companies that it is kind of crazy to think about companies the size of Microsoft and Hitachi and these others, how much they lean in to really try to help entrepreneurs and startups. Is a bit humbling from my side, and we're very, very grateful for it.
So fantastic. Well, I wish you all the best, and not only the very near future, but the long term for RegScale. I'm really excited to see where you take these investments and what you build and what you accomplish. I've had the great fortune to sit in on customer calls and see customers at that aha moment where they get it, and I've also seen then that customer go and actually be your greatest salesperson,
Mm-hmm.
to talk to their peers and whatnot and say, hey, if you've got this problem, here's the problem I had. And I don't think there can be any greater endorsement than that when, a satisfied customer says, you should do this thing because it solved my problem for me as well too. So I think you're on an incredible trajectory. Fantastic to have you with me today. This is the first Founder Friday interview I have done, so I'm hoping you enjoyed the talk as well. How should customers, or anyone that's interested in working with you that may be still watching at this point, get in touch with you? What's the best way? Is it hit the website, request a demo?
Mm-hmm.
What's the best thing they can do to get involved and engage with RegScale right away?
Yeah, a couple easy ways. One, go to regscale.com, click contact us, and that'll route around to someone who'll immediately follow up with you and figure out if we can help you solve your problems. I'm pretty directly accessible too. So like you can go to my LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect directly with you there. Just reference this Microsoft call that you want to learn more about RegScale, and I'd be happy to meet with you, hear what problems you're trying to solve, and see if we can add value to your programs.
There's great resources on your website too for learning. So it's not just see the demo and sort of walk away. But I highly recommend the demo. If you really sort of need to see it to believe it. If you're skeptical, check out the demo. So with that, Travis, thank you for your time today. I really appreciate it. Great discussion. All the best for you and the company, and thanks for sharing not only your time but your organization and your team with us. We feel it's a big part of Microsoft for Startup success this past year, and we really look forward to seeing what you accomplish next.
Absolutely. Thanks for having us. We're honored to be here.